Okay, you should be seeing my screen right now. Abel, can I get a knock? Great. So thank you everyone very much for joining. Um, we're here at the session about the FHIR Package Registry and FHIR Packages in general. My name is Weistra. Our host will be Abel Enthoven. Please put any questions in the Q&A. We'll get to them either during the talk or in a later moment. So please go ahead and put anything in there. Let me introduce myself. My name is Weistra. I work at FHIR. You might know FHIR as organizing the FHIR DevDays conference, but we're definitely not an event company, although we also do that. But mostly FHIR provides all the tools, software, services and training that you need to bring FHIR to life. So we really try to be, we're fully FHIR focused and do everything around that. Anything that is needed to make a success out of the FHIR standard. What I do there is, first of all, product owner. I'm a product owner for the data modeling side of our tools. So that includes simplifier.net, the FHIR collaboration platform, and it includes Forge. And Forge is our FHIR development tool, our desktop development tool for FHIR. And besides that, I'm also the content lead for these FHIR Dev Days. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions here. So that's me. And then let's dive into our talk. What are we going to talk about today? I've structured this in 5 different sections. First of all, I want to take you in the history of FHIR, why we came to FHIR packages, what problem is it solving, and why do we need it? That will be our first slides. And then I'll dive a bit more into what FHIR packages actually are. Next up, we're going to see how can we use FHIR packages. We need to find the right packages of interest to build on them. We need to be able to install them to our computer, to use them as a resource for our own work. And then we can see how we can build things on top of existing FHIR packages. We can make our own FHIR specification, which derives from those FHIR packages. And the last section is about how to create your own packages. How to build them, how to publish them to the world. And I'll also point you to follow-up sessions on the agenda this week where you can start building your own FHIR implementation guide and FHIR package and then distribute that with the world. And as I mentioned, there will be later sessions. I will be giving a session also on Friday where we can see how to make an implementation guide, how to make FHIR packages with simplifier.net. And I'll give you the homework link for that, where you can go to the exercises and already start preparing for that session. So you come prepared and have all the questions ready on Friday. Good. As I said, we're first diving into what problem are we solving? And this is a problem of versioning and being able to point to unique resources within the FHIR world. So you might be familiar with this already a bit, how we are pointing, how we're specifying a unique instance of a FHIR resource. And with FHIR instances, so really data examples, it's simpler, as in they only need to be unique within your own server, because only there your data needs to be uniquely identified. So when we point to a specific FHIR instance, we use the server name, we use the resource type, we use the ID, and then the specific version of this FHIR resource. And then an example URL might look like this. And this is nice because it only needs to be unique within your server. So with this server domain, it makes it unique in referring to it. But when we're talking about FHIR conformance resources, like profiles, value sets, and all those things, those need to be unique on a global level, because we all want to be talking about the same data model, the same patient model, for example, the same US core patient, same version. This is what FHIR uses canonicals for. Canonicals identify your resource. It's a shared, unique identifier. It looks like a URL. It doesn't necessarily need to resolve in the browser, but it needs to be a unique identifier that points to this profile. And this is how FHIR got started. When I have a specific FHIR instance, I can say, okay, in my method.profile, I'm trying to conform to this specific FHIR profile. I claim to conform to that. This specific data element claims to conform to that. And in the same way, my FHIR conformance resources will specify, okay, this is my unique URL. This is where you can always find me. That's all well and good. looks nice. This is how FHIR got started. And this is what it looks like in practice. Let me first go there. We have a patient profile. This patient profile specifies, okay, this is my unique URL. So in my organization, under the structure definitions, I'm the patient. And then when I have an observation will also have its own unique URL. But the observation profile might also refer to the patient, like, hey, I'm an observation for this type of patient. And then it will say in there, okay, the target profile for this data element needs to be this patient that we've defined. So that uniquely points to this patient profile. In the same way, when we have a patient instance, or really patient data, as I mentioned before, you can specify in this meta.profile, I claim to conform to this specific profile. All well and good, but what happens in the FHIR, even in the core FHIR specification, is that across different FHIR versions, we kept using the same canonical. So now when I'm referring to hl7.org/FHIR/structure definition/patient, it's not that clear anymore what I'm referring to. Am I referring to the DSTU 1 or 2 version or the R4 version? So clearly we needed more than just a canonical. And this is where versions came in. So besides having a canonical, I can also specify versions. So this is the patient profile, which has version 4.1. And also here in my referring to a specific profile, I can claim to conform to this specific version of the profile. A great idea. This is how it looks like in practice. Patient profile will specify I'm version 4.1. And when I'm referring from the observation to it, I will also specify with this pipe versioning, I'm linking to this version. And same for this individual patient. Well and good, but it has two problems. One of them is it's quite hard to put the right set of resources together at a later point. So your patient profile might be at version 4.1, your observation profile might be at version 4.4 because it needed more edits in the meantime, etc. So you have no clear idea which ones I need to puzzle together to put my server together. And the second problem is if I change this version of my patient profile, I made a very small change to it, suddenly I also need to update all my other resources that are pointing to that. So this target profile needs to be updated. And this one also needs to be updated. So instead of just updating one resource, I have this cascading set of resources that I need to update. And that's why FHIR packages came in. We're borrowing this from the software world, where we're taking a set of resources together, we're putting them in a fancy zip file, and in there, everything, rather than just globally needing to be unique, it needs to be unique within a certain scope. And that scope is what we call a FHIR package, but also all the dependencies from the FHIR package. So the other FHIR packages that the package is building up on. And when I'm evaluating FHIR data, I need to know against which scope to validate this. So in this case, for example, the my.example.package version 0.0.1 test. And then this patient canonical refers uniquely to this one profile within that FHIR scope, within the FHIR package. Good, that's how we came up with FHIR packages, but now what exactly is a FHIR package? This little box here is our FHIR package, and it has a name, my.package.name, and it has a version number. And this is just a fancy zip file, as I mentioned. Actually, it's a tarball, and you can just open this with like 7-zip or something like that. Generally, you don't need to. And what's in there? No, let's open the box. We see that there is one folder in there, and the folder is called package. So every package will have one folder in there, and it's called package. And then what's in that folder? First of all, this will have a package.json. This is what we call the package manifest. And this is really a metadata file. It's a JSON file which has all the different metadata fields to describe your FHIR package. And I'll go into that in a bit more. What else is in there? Well, of course, all our different FHIR conformance resources. So all our different FHIR profiles, our code systems, our implementation guide resource, etc. All the conformance resources will be directly in that package folder. And then there's optional things which we can also put in our FHIR package. For example, in a /examples folder, we can put all kind of example resources so people know how to use it when they get this package. And we can also put other folders in there. For example, sometimes people put also the XML versions in there because packages by default only have the JSON version of a profile. And then you can put anything you like in there if you keep it nice and small. So that's what's in a FHIR package. The specification is based on the NPM packages, so from the JavaScript world. And the FHIR specification, we have a version of this NPM specification, which we keep on our Confluence. And of course, these slides will be up later today together with the recording of this. So you can click all these links. You don't need to screenshot them or write them down. And FHIR packages, the nice thing of FHIR packages is that they're permanent. So if you're building on a FHIR package, that package will always be around and it will always stay as it is now. That's really nice because it's a building block of your own FHIR structures, and no one should be allowed to pull building blocks out of your FHIR building. The only thing that a package author can do is say, well, I recommend that you don't use this anymore. And that's why we're using unlisting. So as an author of a package, I can say, okay, I'm unlisting this package. That will be a signal to everyone who's using that package. I should probably look at whether there's a newer version or an alternative package that I should be building on. Just like deprecated software, basically. And packages, they contain all the FHIR resources, but they can also contain the implementation guide, or an implementation guide can refer to a specific package, where the implementation guide is really the documentation around that FHIR package. So the PDF manual that you need to understand what's actually in the package. And in both our Let's Build sessions, there will be a session tomorrow by Jose going into implementation guides, and there will be a Let's Build session on implementation guides and packages Thursday and Friday. I promised to come back to this package manifest, this package.json file. We see an example file here on the left. We don't need to understand all the different things which are in there, but what is mandatory here, we need to make sure that it has a name, it has a version, and when I'm hiding oh yeah, it has an author. I need to hide the little video screen here. So these 4 things are mandatory. And if you are also distributing an implementation guide in that package, there's a few more. They're listed on the documentation, just to make sure that it stays in sync with the metadata, which is in the IG resource. Like, what is the canonical for this FHIR specification? The overarching canonical. So that's the package manifest, has all your metadata. And that's also what we'll see back when we're starting to find actual FHIR packages. So now we're going to how to use FHIR packages. We're going to search for them, finding anything that we like to build on top. We're going to install them on our machine and building things on top of them. Finding FHIR packages has become a whole lot easier since the last time I gave this presentation in June. The left side is still the same. We have different FHIR package feeds. If you're familiar with RSS feeds, someone needs to clean the dustbin. This is all very, very live. Good. Here you go. Very important. There's different package feeds. If you're familiar with RSS feeds, where people publish news articles, this is very similar to that. It will have entries for every different FHIR package resource. Thank you. Every different FHIR package instance, and they will all be different one FHIR feeds here. HL7 has some feeds itself. So if you publish an official balloted IG with HL7, it will come to the HL7.org publications. There will be terminology feeds with all kinds of packages in there. There's a feed from the FHIR Foundation, and there can be feeds from different HL7 affiliates. And also simplifier.net, the platform, as I mentioned, the FHIR collaboration platform that I'm the product owner for. It has its own FHIR package feed. So if you create a package on Simplifier, what we'll do on Friday, you can bring that to the package server so everyone can find that in the world. And all these different feeds are being read by one FHIR package server, which we run at simplifier.net for the community. This brings all the different versions from all the different packages which are published out there in the world together. So on simplifier.net, you have access to all these different packages. There's an API on top of that. You can reach that via packages.fhir.org or packages.simplifier.net. And the documentation link is also in the slides here. And if you're a machine, you can talk to that. Or if you're building tools, you can talk to that to get every FHIR package that you need. But we've also recently, funded by HL7 International, built this registry.fhir.org, the FHIR Package Registry. And this is really an interface for humans where you can search for the package of your interest based on all the metadata that's in that package.json. So let's have a look at the human readable registry.fhir.org, the FHIR Package Registry. I have an example here where I searched for UK core. So I'm looking for the UK, United Kingdom core profiles. And you see that there are 10 results found here. Every result is a little white box here, is one specific FHIR package. It will list the package name, so uk.core.r4. It will list the publisher, it will list the description. And if your search terms hit on specific resources within the package, it will also list them. So you can choose to either click one of these specific resources because you're interested in one resource, or you can click on the entire package here. We can all do all kind of filtering here, finding only packages within a specific FHIR version. We can search for older packages, but generally we only want the latest and greatest. Or we can filter down to only search for individual resources. When we click one specific FHIR package, we come to the package page and we see that there's all kind of different resources in here. So there's examples, there's profiles, value sets, code systems, implementation guide resources, search parameters, etc. Everything. You can click on them to view them. There's a nice rendering of them on Simplifier. You can filter through them to find a specific resource. You can go to the view on Simplifier, see all the metadata, see all the versions of the FHIR packages. But when you were happy with this resource, so in this case, we found the DE Basisprofil R4. So these are the German core profiles. When we were happy with these resources, yes, this is a package that we want to build on top of. We remember the name and we can, for example, install it directly to our computer. So here, when we've clicked on Torinox, we get the direct install commands, how to install this on our computer. What does installing mean? Well, basically, it's just downloading this FHIR package from the package server and then looking all the dependencies that this package has. So the other FHIR packages that it's building on top of. In this case, for example, it's building on top of the core FHIR specification. So it's also downloading that package. And they're all downloading that to your computer in a folder in your home drive. So all the tools on your computer, all the FHIR tools can reuse that. So I copy this command. I put it in my terminal. And what we'll see, I'm typing here, FHIR R4, install my specific package. Well, first of all, you'll see that it's installing that specific package itself. So the product package here, but that package again depends on the base package for Acme. And that package again is building on top of US Core. And that package again is building on top of a specific version of the FHIR Core specification. That's the one that takes a while here because it's quite big, it needs to be downloaded. So it's installing all these dependencies together. No need for you to download them, copy them for somewhere. You have all your resources that you're depending on to work with that. So this is how you would install it to your own computer. And now you can do anything with it. Use Torinox, for example, to validate against it, those kind of things. But generally, you will be, if you're making your own FHIR specification, you will be using Forge or the IG Publisher to make derived versions of a specific package. For example, you're building on top of UK Core. If you're in Forge, maybe you've attended the tutorial by Miriam and the Let's Build session by Ardon on the first day. If you go to Forge in your project view, you'll have a dependencies tab. And in this dependencies tab, you can do the exact same search for a FHIR package. So it's a bit small here, but maybe I can make it bigger actually. Yeah, awesome. So you can see that we can do a specific version of US Core or specific FHIR Core version. It will install all those dependencies for you if you just type them in the dependencies tab for Forge. And then you have all the resources that you need to build on top of. Similarly, when you're using FHIR shorthand, maybe you've been to the demo by Mark and Chris. You can specify your dependencies, your FHIR package dependencies in your config.yaml, and it will be downloading them, and you can build on top of them, refer to all the resources in there. And also when you're using the implementation guide publisher, the IG publisher, you do the same. You can just specify the FHIR packages. No need for you to download everything to your local folder. All these tools know how to handle FHIR packages, getting them from the FHIR package server and bringing them to your computer. So this is how you will be building on top of these FHIR resources, on top of these FHIR packages. Then next question, of course, is how do we create our own packages? How do I make a package? And then how do I, once I have this package, distribute this to the FHIR package server so anyone can use it in the wide world? When making a FHIR package, there's a few things I need to cover. First of all, how should I name my package? Well, there's a few guidelines for this, and it generally consists of for which region is this package relevant, for which, who is the author, who has published this package, who wants to vouch for this one, what's the package about, the subject, and then there needs to be dots in there, at least one dot. You can use multiple dots. For example, we have some examples here on the right. HL7 will start everything with HL7. This is also a protected namespace. You should not be releasing packages within this namespace because you're basically claiming to be HL7. So HL7 has this HL7.FHIR, and then every core package will have .core, .r4. I think it's actually the other way around. I need to look that up. Or it will have maybe a regional indication. So this is a global one. This is also a global one. The UV stands for universal. And then the package is about structured data capture, so SDC. Or for the US domain, they've released the core package. And similarly, UK.core means, okay, this is the core version, the core resources for UK and the core resources for Germany. So feeds can claim a namespace, so don't get into the .FHIR or the .HL7, and generally you'll be correct. So that's the package naming. Think about your package naming, make it clear, put your name in there, maybe your country, and be clear about what your package is about. And then the second thing is it needs to have a version. Generally, you start somewhere low and you build up over the time. This is an example version number. It's called semantic versioning. So this is really a standard on how versions need to be. This is really also becoming generally, if you're using version anywhere in the FHIR standard, you will probably need to refer to semver. And semver is quite simple. It has a number, a dot, a number, a dot, a number. And then optionally, it will have a dash, and then you can put anything behind that you want. The first number will be your major version. So if it's not ready for release yet, that's probably a 0. If you make your first public release, it's probably a 1. And then every time you make a major incompatible change, you will up that version number. The second one is your minor version number. You can up this anytime you put something significant into your new FHIR package, but it's not a breaking change. It's compatible with the previous profile. So, and then the patch version is for any small changes. They need to be backwards compatible fixes, not really new features. The label is important if you want to specify that this package is not ready for anyone to be used. So you can make pre-releases like a -alpha or a -beta to make clear that this is not ready for prime time. But also I urge you, anytime you make a test package, just to see coming days how this works, put a -test or a -anything behind that, because that will make clear, you don't confuse anyone, that this is a package that people should actually use in production. So please do that. An example of versioning I've put here. In this case, in the development branch, it's very common to software versioning and branching in general. When I make my first major release, that will probably be my 1.0.0 version of the package. I first made this available to the wide world. People start implementing this now in their servers. So they specify on their server, please download this package, and then I'm going to put data in there which conforms to it. At some point, I find a minor issue with that, and then I keep developing, and I probably want to release a 1.0.1. It's a just very small fix. It's a typo, something like that, any inconsequential. It's backwards compatible. So I only up the patch number. I can choose now whether I want to signal to people you should not be using 1.0.0 anymore. I really recommend you to update or not. And if I want to do that, I can unlist my 1.0.0 package. Similarly, at some point, I might be already working on major incompatible changes. And this is where I start my 2.0 branch. People should really know when they start to upgrade to this version of my package, that's a major step. They need to do some serious work. Their previous data will not be valid anymore. So that's where I start with the 2.something branch. And I first maybe want to make a release of that where I gather some feedback from people, the early adopters. So I make an RC-RC1, release candidate 1, so people can already play around with it, but know that it's not ready for prime time. And then at some point, I will probably release a stable version of that, 2.0.0, and I unlist my preview packages. We can continue that. At some point, I add major features to my 2.0.0 branch, and I might add a 2.1.0. And similarly, at some point, I might backport that same feature also to my older packages that I'm still maintaining, and I can release a 1.1.0, even while I'm already also releasing 2.0 versions. And at some point, you might want to say, okay, stop using 1.0, we're moving forward to the 2.0. You really need to upgrade right now. So that's a bit about versioning. So now we know how we're going to name our package, how we're going to version our package. So you can start creating a package. A very simple way to do it, and of course I'm biased here, but you go to simplifier.net, you make your FHIR project, you go to the packages tab in there, and there's a very simple wizard where you can say, create a new package. You're asked to give your package a name, you're asked to give your package a version number. Remember, keep using that -test to make sure that it's not a release ready package. You can give it release information. You can leave most settings as they are and then save, and you've made your first package. And in a few days, this will also be on the registry.fhir.org, but hopefully as a pre-release, so people don't get bothered by it. Similarly, when you're using the IG Publisher, anytime you run the IG Publisher on a set of resources, it will create your own package. So here I highlighted the line where it's made my nl.Weistra.acme-dev package. So this is my development package, which is already installed to my package cache. So every time that's made. And I can also use Torinox to take one specific folder, package it up as a package. So this is how you make a package. But then in the simplifier side, it's already being published to the wide world if you choose to do that. How does it get to the package server? Well, it needs to end up in one of these package feeds that I showed before. Simplifier has its own package feed. So anytime you publish a production ready package, it will end up in the simplifier package feed. That's the way it's going to end up in the registry.fhir.org. And as I mentioned, on Friday, I'm giving a Let's Build with this. I'll be pointing you to the exercises at the end of the slides. And there you can start building your own packages with Simplifier. If you are making a balloted HL7 implementation guide, you're using that entire infrastructure. Once it's balloted, once it's ready and approved, it will end up in the HL7 feed. And as I mentioned, Jose is tomorrow giving an introduction to the IG Publisher, which you should use for that. And also on the same day, he's going to show you how that's done in the Let's Build.
Bart, can I interrupt you for a second?
Of course, yes.
There's a question of Hans van Amstel. He wants to know, is this FHIR registry also available as a standalone server that can be locally hosted?
That's a great question. So our FHIR server isn't necessarily, but this is just basically an NPM server, and Hans is more familiar with this than I am probably. You can use, for example, just one of your current NPM servers, or you can use Happy to show an endpoint, NPM endpoint internally in your organization. I should mention that probably at some point we will be giving you, people like Hans, the ability to unsimplify or have these private package feeds where you can only get packages after you're authenticated. Yeah. If you're really technical, if you're handy, you can set up your own package feed. And there's in the documentation of the registry, there's information on how to do that and how to get your own packages in there and get it picked up by the FHIR package server. So yeah, that's how you're doing it to get it into the FHIR package server. If you don't care about that, it's only internal use, which is probably rare. But if you do, you can indeed set up your own internal NPM server within your organization or enterprise and put the packages in there.
Thanks, Art.
Thanks, Abel. So that basically concludes the topics I wanted to discuss. And then, as I mentioned, I have a bit of homework. If you want to do this, of course. This talk is part of the Let's Build a FHIR Spec recommended talks. And after us, over the last 2 days, you've been making your own profiles in Forge or in FHIR shorthand. Now comes the time to package them together and to put a documentation on top of it in the form of an IG guide, an implementation guide. So on Thursday, come to José's talk where you learn about the IG Publisher. Go to his Let's Build, where you make implementation guides and packages with the IG Publisher. And on Friday, join me and Ardon to make an implementation guide and a FHIR package with Simplifier. And if you take this bit.ly link, I think we've also put it in the chat of the Whova chat. If you go there, you can already find our exercises, so you can play around and already have your questions ready on Friday. And I think that's where I'd like to wrap up. Packages really allow you to be clear on your scope everywhere. So we don't have to guess globally anymore. Okay, does it mean this canonical or does it mean this resource with the same canonical? You can really be specific. Okay, I'm talking about this package and all the packages that one depends on. And please only have a look there, what I'm talking about. So you can be clear on your scope. FHIR packages are stable collections, so they will always be around, and we guarantee that if you have the same package name and the same package version number, that will not change over time. So you don't need to save that one anywhere. It's being stored for you in the registry.phir.org. And we've seen how we can build on top of FHIR packages. We have stable ground to build on top of it. And also how we publish our own stable FHIR packages, so our customers will have stable resources to use and to implement in their FHIR server. Here's the link again to the bit.ly, and here's how to contact me via email, via Twitter, or of course you can reach out to me in Whova, or right now we're opening the Q&A.
The Q&A, yes. Well, I've got a question from Nandan.
Okay.
And he says, what is in the IG in addition to what's in a package?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I'm talking about an implementation guide, I really refer to the documentation around all your conformance resources. So it basically starts with, when I take the analogy of a simplifier project, you have all these resources in there, value sets, profiles, they refer to each other. There is some documentation in these resources already, but you probably want to put some extra human readable explanation around that. Like, hey, this is how we intended this is what you should watch out for, these are the security measures, etc. That's what you put in your implementation guide. So it's really the manual you get with the resources. And then once you're ready with both your implementation guide and your conformance resources, you can package them up, make this fancy zip file, give it a name, give it a version number, and then people can refer to it and know that it will never change.
Cool. That's a great answer, Bart. There's also, I already got a question and I also already answered it a little bit, but Ankita asked about pointing to profiles. So she wants to know something more about, how do you reference a profile from a resource or from a profile, for example, a profile from a profile from a resource?
Yeah, so I think we should have a look at the first slide. We figured out how to get there. Yeah. So this is the very simple way, as I mentioned. This is how you would refer to them in your profile. You give all your profiles with the URL thing. You give them a unique canonical. Same for other profiles. And then when in a specific thing I'm referring to another profile, I say, okay, the target profile is this specific other profile. And of course, with Forge, you have a nice UI around this. You can just paste those links and select them. And similarly for FHIR instances, so the real data, this is what we're talking about, is more metadata. So the data model, this is real data, a real patient. So this is, I don't know, Abel. And there on meta.profile, this document about Abel, it specifies, okay, I've structured this document according to this specific profile. So this is really the meta.profile where you refer to, where you claim to conform to that specific resource. And in the current situation with FHIR packages, you need to be clear in what scope we're talking about. And generally, one FHIR server will have a specific scope. So if you're talking to a Dutch hospital, it's probably the scope of a Dutch national FHIR standard with all the dependencies, what that is building up on.
Thanks, Bart. I think that answers the question. I have another question from Diederik. He asks, for let's build a FHIR spec track.
Yes.
We've done some profiling using Forge and some profiling in FHIR.
Yeah.
What do we need to do to combine these efforts for the next step?
That's a great question. So when you're making FHIR shorthand resources, you make these .fsh files, these fish files. But when you run Sushi, the little command line tool that they have, or if you run the IG publisher, which includes Sushi, that is being translated to regular structure definitions. So in your, for example, if you're in a session with Mark and Chris yesterday, you will probably have run Sushi. You have an output folder, and that's where the structure definitions come, the JSON files, the XML files. And that's exactly the same as the files that come out of Forge. So these are the files you take, and this is what you would upload, for example, to your simplifier project and then make a package out of, or make your implementation guide around. And as Jose will show you tomorrow, you can also use both intermittently or mixed together in an IG when you use the IG publisher.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Bart. And also another question from Ankita. She asks, here URL will also point to third-party profile.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Well, that can very well be the case. So if I'm building my own Dutch profiles and I'm deriving from the Dutch national standard, I don't need to redo all the work that they've done. I will just say, okay, my package depends on the Dutch core profiles. So when I'm referring to a patient in one of my profiles, maybe I made a specific immunization profile. When I'm referring to a patient there, I can just refer to the canonical that the Dutch national patient has. Because it's in my scope, because it's a dependency of my FHIR package, I can refer to that canonical, and we know exactly where to look, where to find that resource.
Okay, great. Another question from Diederik. It's more of a clarification that he wants to have. So he says, and he wants you to confirm, he says, we can push the artifacts from both Forge and FHIR to the same simplifier project?
Yes, but make sure that your FHIR files, that's basically, there's an intermediate format where you can set FHIR files, conform them to, or translate them to the regular structure definitions and value sets, etc. These .json file, .xml files that all the FHIR specification uses. Make sure that you take those and then take your Forge generated structure definitions and put them together. So not directly the FHIR files, but the files that came out of the FHIR files.
Okay, another question from Hans. He asks, would it be possible to have Forge save as FHIR files? I could answer that as well.
Everything is possible, as long as you build it.
Yeah, we haven't built it, right?
No, we haven't built it, and it's maybe someday. Right now, in Forge, we try to focus on having a nice user interface, trying to focus on giving you guidance on what the best way to do something is, make things as simple as possible for you. And we don't necessarily go back to the fish structure format, but maybe someday if someone would like to build that transformation. I know, for example, that the fish team is already actively working on this way to transform structure definitions back to a fish file. If we have this in a lossless way, then it doesn't matter what you save it, we can always convert it to the other one. I don't think they're there yet, but it was also already pretty decent when I saw it last time. So it will probably come.
Nice. Yeah, thank you. Well, actually, we have no more questions. If people want to know more, they can quickly post one in Q&A, I guess.
Yeah, or raise your hand. We can unmute.
Still have 5 minutes. Yeah, we can also unmute if that's necessary. I don't see any hands. I guess everything is clear, Bart.
Nice, very good. I'll also post a blog post in the chat. I will do that about the FHIR registry. It's a really cool tool to play around with. You can find really all the prior art in the FHIR world already there. So if you're thinking, is there already a value set on COVID-19? There is, I know, but you can find it via the registry.fhir.org. Or is there something with genomics? Is there something with etc.? So that's really cool to play around with. And then I thank you for your time. We'll probably stick around for the coming 3.5 minutes, so feel free to raise your hand.
Yeah, you can still do that. Thank you, Bart.
Thanks, Abel.
Oh, there's another question.
Lovely.
Last moment. It's posed by Parsifal, and he asks, how is it possible to manage the use case where we have to manage different versions of the FHIR profiles in the same FHIR server?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, so generally we try to avoid that. But if you really need to, you can still use this the canonical versioning in this way. It's still possible. It's just we aren't a big fan of using that. So try to avoid it where you can. But if you really need to, then it's still around. You can still use it. Cool. It just has the downsides of this cascading changes of your profiles. And making it harder for people to see, okay, there's multiple versions of this profile together. Which do I need to use version 4.1 of the profile with version 4.2 of the value set? These kind of questions.
Thanks. Well, if there are no more questions,
we're just gonna sit around.
Just gonna sit around and wait.
Actually, I might leave a minute early because I'm going to the Q&A with Joris Leker.
You are, okay, so you're happy actually.
Or actually, maybe I offloaded that to Frank. Yeah, actually I did. It's still on my agenda. That was a problem.
Okay. Okay, Bart, I'm going to end the session. Oh no, there's another one.
Yes.
Very last minute. Is there an automatic mechanism to migrate from one canonical version of the profile to the other?
Oh, that would be lovely.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
But no, I think this is the same age-old problem also when you upgrade your database in software. I think at least with package dependencies, no one is forcing you to upgrade before you want to. So you can stick to that old package version as long as you want. Maybe at some point the user and the author doesn't recommend it. But then if a new package version is out, you can change the package dependencies and see if anything major breaks. But then you will still need to do the transformations yourself. Like if something major has changed, the profiles don't include the information on, okay, I used to have one field for this, now there's two. How do I split this to two different fields? That's a tough database upgrading question.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I imagine the FHIR spec at some point will need to have database upgrade scripts for that.
Yeah. Okay, Wart, we're going to wrap up because I know that the organizers are very strict about this. So
yes.
thank you very much, and see you on DevDays.